mistake. We're back. Hey, Ruben. First time testing out our intro outro system over here with you. But welcome to the show, man. I'm really happy to have you here. I've been really looking forward to having you on the show. And I was saying before this, usually I build a relationship with people on the show and it expands into a relationship off the air. But with you, it's the opposite way around. So, yeah, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ravi. And first of all, I appreciate the opportunities, and we've been connected for more than a year now with various, from what's that club,
Clubhouse, yeah.
clubhouse, and that's how we started, I think. And then since then, we have done many different events together, and we've been talking about doing my own podcast and those kind of things. So it's I'm very uh, glad to be here and giving some of the my stories. That's my
Yeah,
life.
and that's what I want to dive into is your stories because speaking of Clubhouse, that's and us meeting. I just want to give the audience your perspective. So we started doing Clubhouse just as peaking last year in February, and the experiment was to run. We ran about 76 consecutive clubhouses, right, like back to back,
Mhm.
about 3 months, in Monday to Friday. I think Monday to Saturday in a row,
Yeah,
and you were one of the few that was there almost every single day. So we kept a tracker,
yeah,
with who came and spoke, and you were there every day. And one of the things I loved about this is that over this period of time, we got to know more and more about you. All these like tiny stories came out until we understood you at a different level and context. And that's one of the things I really enjoyed about our clubhouse days. But today, I kind of want to unpack some of these stories into larger segments. You
thank
know.
you. Yeah, I mean, I think it is important as a
Mhm.
entrepreneur as well as a human being. There are a lot of stories behind us, and I'm trying to say I'm a historian in the sense I try to look at everything what we do have some meaning, and
Mhm.
everything you do, you learn something, or you teach something, or you go and achieve something. Those kind of aspect. So I started writing, and we'll go into more detail a little later, even before the clubhouse time. And then I started finding contents coming from so many different places, and as you go through your life experiences and life where you meet people, and that become a story. And then it expand into, and the main thing is the people, the reception of those message. That what really gave me motivation to write more and more.
Mhm. Yeah, and that's exactly what I want to dive into today. Is especially this, who have accomplished so much in so many deep fields, and coming from a very strenuous background, which I want to get into. Taking the time to produce content, like starting writing. You starting your I think your weekly blog. You've been doing it for almost 2 years now, right? Every week
Yeah,
you've been
it's more
publishing a
than two.
blog.
Yeah, actually, it's about 2 years now. Yeah.
Yeah, and one of the things I appreciated you opening up about is that you were taking this as a challenge to force yourself to compile your stories down, so you can tell the stories better, right? And I want to talk a little bit about that process, right? Unpacking things, especially someone who has a senior career in both innovation and in the different fields you come from. What does that look like in terms of unpacking, all these years, all these different components? What goes into like a good storytelling, whether it be blog format or Clubhouse or even here?
Yeah, it is interesting because I never thought myself to be a storyteller, because I get fascinated by the people who can talk very fluently, connect different dots, and go through that. I am, trained by trained being an engineer. So for me, it's more science and following through that. Then suddenly it hit me some time after that. The science has theories and logic behind it, and then you have supporting arguments, and going through that, going and presenting that to audience and convincing them of your how you got there. as well as teaching some of those lessons, from a scientific point of view. I applied this, then as you said, I was part of two successful startups. I was able to go and, help the team execute and build product, very complex product in a way which with this, 1/10 of a team of a big corporation to be able to do that. I was thinking all of that, and then, oh, so the writing part, even though people make a lot of, you had to do learn a lot offline and all that. I didn't want to do that way because I didn't want to go and get another degree in writing and in English literature. What
Mhm.
I rather did was I went and used my science background and use that logic. So if you look at my writings, it will start with some foundational, introduction. Then I have a 3 to 5 points with supporting argument and close it out, so that way it doesn't get boring and doesn't get too long. So this is a process which I followed my, educational part as well as my career, and
Mhm.
apply that one into this as another challenge. Because as you'll go into the startup world, coming from Sri Lanka and starting in Silicon Valley, I never thought I will be able to build a $1 billion company, and I still don't know how complex it would have been, but for me it was naturally coming, pulling these things together. So that's how I started then. That worked out. So I applied that one to my weekly writings, my podcast, my YouTube videos, as well as I do mentor a lot of people. So I always apply the same principle, the simple, there are the format, and then collect that. And if I go beyond into that, actually one of the area there is, how do I come up with these topics and all that. It is basically, there are two forms of it. One of them is funny, one of them is, other one is, I whenever I sit down, I talk to people. When I hear from different people or read some article, it hits, oh, people are talking about this content. I had this experience and I was able to achieve this one. So I take my iPhone, and I have the notepad open most of the time. So immediately I put the topic there saying, hey, this is what the question is. And then I put, like, a couple of those point which came to my mind at that point. Then I refine over the next few days, as when I'm driving, when I'm doing other things. And the funny part of it is, when I'm taking shower, I think about these items. And when I come out of it, I just run to my phone and I type it, finish it. So I just trying to find 3 or 4 points. And then once I find the point, I started finding the examples how I came through that process. And
Mhm.
so adding that content back to it, then it completes the thought process. Then once you have the thought process, it takes an hour to write the article. I mean, it doesn't take more than that.
I really like how you broke that down into like a system, because I think that's everything, especially with good content. It's weird to think about, but content is actually not consumed by people; it's consumed by machines,
Mhm.
because the algorithms go and figure out who to target this towards, who to ping,
Yeah.
whose feed to put it on towards. So by building a system, you kind of systemizing your production speed. You're also systemizing it inadvertently for these algorithms as well, because great content, it's also about frequency. So
Yeah.
being able to produce content at frequency at a relative speed helps you build an audience and helps you build a community around that. And I feel like this is what you're doing, because I feel a book that is going to be coming on called The Accidental
I already
Entrepreneur.
have the topic, as well as I have about 40 to 50,
Mhm.
uh, content which is not written on any one of these articles,
Mhm.
because you can do. And yeah, so that content will, this book which I'm talking about in Tamil is called Nooradi. It's
Mm.
100 feet from, and I have gone through so much of thing. I was as an observer, as well as an experiencer, and looking at it, what I have seen, where, from the Silicon Valley, where I was in the have the front seat for these startups, as well as when my father passed away, I was right there 100 feet away, as well as when You know, in Sri Lanka, when I went through the war, I was, shot multiple times. I was 100 feet away from, shot down, and 100 feet from escaping the, detention camp, all of those. So I have setting up the, because I have given the interest, as you said, with my marketing, my knowledge, my startup, that is the later part of the life. But all of these came from the foundation of what I got earlier in the life. And
Yeah.
so that is the one people have been encouraging me to write out all that. So I have identified about 40 different topics in that subtitle. So I'm after some time, I want to start going and publishing that book. Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. And one of the things about the theme of accidental entrepreneur, I think, is really interesting. Coming from the idea that you stumbled upon an opportunity to be an entrepreneur, and I think the story is really ambiguous because not a lot of people are put in this kind of situation where you are able to leverage a high value opportunity. I'll let you break it down, but I do want to
Yeah.
start with like how I got introduced to it. I mean, you came into our clubhouse. We were talking about sales, about business, about marketing. We had all these topics about entrepreneurship, about also lifestyles and things like that. And one of the topics of that day, we were talking about sales. And I remember everyone in the room is mostly entrepreneurs coming in saying like, "Yeah, this was my biggest sale. This is how I got it." In a way of like breaking down with it, how they achieved it. And I believe you came in the room and you said something like, I got one of my sales or one of my first sales was like $50 million or like $500 million. And it was a hard, like a large one sale, one specific buyer. And we got it. And it's like a mic drop moment where the entire, like everyone was quiet because you never hear of such a size when it comes to an opportunity like that. And for a salesperson, I think I remember saying this was that like something like that, like a salesperson's dream to be able to accomplish something, such a grand scale project, right? But I want to break this down and coming back to you, like accidental entrepreneur. Could you repeat us that moment? Like or a series of moments? What made you an accidental entrepreneur?
Yeah, so that is important part of it. I started writing about it. The accidental entrepreneur, first the name came about to me
Mm,
was I never set out to go and build companies in US. I came here to study. I got to get my green card. I get a good corporate job, and I was happy. I getting promoted. I was making good money. I could have lived there, and suddenly one of I get an offer to go work for a company called Broadcom,
mhm,
which was a startup then, and they gave me 15,000 shares. I and my company, which I was working for, Rockwell, they give me $15,000, and I say, hey, $15,000 in the bank now. This 15,000 shares would maybe disappear because a startup success rate is very low. So I was talking about that, thinking about that, and then I went to my manager and said, and he gave me this $15,000. So I took that job. I rejected my startup career, startup job then, and they went public. The Broadcom went public, and I would have made maybe $3 to $5 million out of that 15,000 share because it was a very early stage, and they had multiple splits before going public. So that is when we realized there is something called startup, and you can make a lot of money. And so that is where I met with a couple of my founding team members of the first startup, and we ran into, and we said, why, if these guys can do it, why can't we? And we came up with an idea for voice over internet protocol, and we went about starting the company. So that is where I got into entrepreneurship in an official form. So if you look at it, kind of
mm,
accidental. But that word accidental entrepreneur was very intentionally, I chose that one. When I write this article about my childhood, my how I brought it up, I moved to Africa after Sri Lanka, came to US and did all that. Some of my readers started telling you are not an accidental entrepreneur, you were destined to be an entrepreneur. I
mm,
said, Bingo. I mean, you got the point. I mean, it is a contradiction there. I was trained over my lifetime, losing my father at 12 and going through the war in Sri Lanka, leaving the country. And during that time, I got experience with, sports leadership, community leadership. So you learn a lot of these management and those part of it, which set the stage for me to be an entrepreneur in the future.
Hmm.
Okay, so that is where these two words come together. One of
Yeah.
them is that accidentally I dropped into it, and the other side, it wasn't actually an accident.
Yeah. And I love the play on words because it's not something that you normally hear because everyone pursues entrepreneurship, right? Everyone wants to pursue innovation. I want to be seen as the most innovative person in this climate where that's kind of the culture. So like the idea that you were put in a position to be like it accidentally fell upon you, I think it's what really stands out. But talking a little bit about that, about the journey of like a immigrant to become an entrepreneur. We hear that so much. Like so many of the greatest entrepreneurs were immigrants.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is? What is it about unique to the immigrant journey that makes us prime for entrepreneurship?
I mean, there are a couple of things you can look at it, and one main one, major one is, uh, we don't have. I mean, for example, when you come to US for me and start all these work and paying, like getting the
Hmm.
foundational part of it. Once you pass that, you don't have network, you don't have something to, corporate America. Still there is a ladders, you had to move up and you had to work hard. And if you're lucky, you will get to do a situation where you will become a VP or CEO of a big company,
Hmm.
because your background network, because that one normally helps in addition to your talent.
Hmm.
And which, as an immigrant and entrepreneurs, immigrant people, for us, we want to have that, the hack or the shortcut to get there. How do we do that faster?
Yeah.
Only way in Silicon Valley, and people talk about all of these one. Again, there are American founders and they have done quite well also, but majority of those founders are, from Asia, as Southeast Asia or China or the different areas of world, because the opportunity to connect is not there. So by going and taking this big risk and working with, convincing these venture capitalists or customers to take believe in you, and it makes it very, I don't know what the right word is, but very driven part of it, you can do that. The
Hmm.
one other part of it is important when you are doing all of these ones. These are, big goals you are setting up to do that, so you need to be very at, good talented from the technology side. Otherwise, other side, you have to be able to convince these people to be able to put the money into that. So these entrepreneurs who come from outside the country, they have lived this multiple times over. Even coming making to US is a challenge.
Hmm.
Making, even in their countries, they are top students. Getting there, it is tough. So they have done this multiple times over. So this, when you come here and when you are put in front of some of these VCs and all that, your creativity gets out. And then you started saying, because the startups, you go through so much ups and downs, so much changes, so much different things. So by being there and able to overcome these ones, and you show that confident with them, then they, fund you and let you go and innovate.
Yeah. So I want to kind of bring in the context of living in Silicon Valley in California, one of the most innovation-rich economies in the world.
Mhm.
Because I live outside Toronto, and there's a lot of innovation happening, but it's always compared to the Valley. We were always told here, if you have a great project, take it to the Valley. You want like a California investor Toronto's investors are too conservative. Like we
Mhm.
want the risk takers, that attitude there, because you're uniquely not just someone who grew up professionally working in the California environment. You're also an angel investor with Sandhill Angels,
Mhm.
quintessentially one of the most core angel groups in the valley. So I would love to hear about your experience, growing up with that scene. What has that been like for like a South Asian immigrant growing up there?
Yeah, I mean that is another area of importance because I think in Silicon Valley, if you go to a Starbucks, if you go to any coffee shop, if you go to and there are a lot of brunch or breakfast places here
Hmm.
where people are just sitting and drawing out things in the napkins and talking about it. You run into, I mean, every place you go, you will run into innovators or venture capitalists or somebody. So the one other area is, one important thing is Stanford and UC Berkeley being close to here. You
Hmm.
have access to a lot of professors and education system. But the second part of it is having everybody, the venture capitalists, angel investors, startup people, and I mean, if you look at it all time, the Silicon Valley and Genentech, Intel, all of them were startups. 70s and 80s came out of Silicon Valley. So there were that DNA of connecting people in a small area. Actually, Silicon Valley is not a huge area. People, the economy of the Silicon Valley is so huge, but the concentration of this talent and the pool is so small area. So by doing that, you are able to move and move around with different people, talk to different people. I mean, you can have 4 meetings a day versus other places we go you have one meeting in 4 days kind of thing, because you can move around from one venture capitalist to another person, or go to a corporate headquarters, or you meet with engineers in a different area. So you have that concentration of energy where everybody is together. So you run into people and you can talk about it. Hey, I have some problem, or you call this guy. And again, you don't just have to, before COVID time, you can just drive and meet somebody for 15 minutes and get that. So those are the the concentration of knowledge, money, and opportunity, which made the Silicon Valley bigger. It's not that, I mean, but as you earlier said, most of these innovators are coming from foreign countries, even Canada, even
Hmm.
all of these different places. But why are they able to do here is the opportunity of everything, the proximity to everything is so close.
Yeah, like how did that shape things? Because generally, especially coming from a South Asian background, so being Tamil, you're kind of like socialized not to take risk, and
Yeah,
uh,
I mean, it is very interesting part of it. I mean,
mm,
again, we have done taken risk in Sri Lanka where that arid land, and where we able to farm and get out of it and do some of these small scale risk.
mm,
But majority of the people get to government job and they settle there. They retire with and when they hit 55 years old, and they are happy with that, and they think beyond job and materialistic thing. They are very religious, or they are community based, and all of those one. So coming here, it was very interesting and different, because you have a good job. You have, it can take you to lead and take you to different places, and suddenly you are deciding to jump off the wagon, what it was running, and trying to do this startup. So it wasn't, it is different. And I remember at the beginning, there were people used to say, what's, is he crazy, when I kind of viscera, is
mm,
it crazy to do this, because he done good at Stanford and he should be able to get very good paying job. So going through this process was not you know accepted then. But lately I see a few more people in Silicon Valley from our community, but I see a lot more in Canada and Sri Lanka. They are trying to do startups and getting to that one. But again, I just want to make sure people don't misunderstand this as going to startup and doing is the greatest thing in the world.
Mm.
For that you need to be make sure. I mean, I worked for first 5 years at Rockwell, and before that I had a good education from Stanford and University of Minnesota, and I lifelong balance of experience coming from entrepreneurial life. So you need to make sure you are able to manage these things over time,
Mm.
not just because I want to be an entrepreneur, I want to make money, I want to be famous. I would be careful for those people, because unless you get that experience and you can articulate what is your vision is and go build a team to produce a product, those are so important part. So if you don't have that experience on that, gain some experience, and then go and start doing that.
Yeah, I love that you brought that up because it seemed like part of like what's cool right now. The counterculture is to go and escape the 9 to 5, escape the corporate life, and go and build something that can change the world. And everyone kind of gears towards that. And I love to tie that into the work you do back home in Sri Lanka, and with the innovators and entrepreneurs there. And is there a culture shift you see between innovators here and entrepreneurs back home? Is there a difference in origin? Is there more like what kind of culture differences do you see?
So there are two part of it, yeah. Because first of all, do they have the talent and capability to do these kind of great
Mm,
things? Uh, I have seen it. The reason is I am one of them, because I went to high school. I went left Sri Lanka after the 12th grade to come through Africa to here. So in my opinion,
mhm,
the talent is available, and as I talk to them, they have the talent and they have the thinking process of the latest technology, say AI, machine learning, agriculture, or various aspect of it. But where they miss sometime is, they try to go into some of these without understanding the market dynamic. Earlier you talked about sales, marketing, and product management, and in people management, even because you had to be able to build a team which is in which you can motivate and all that. So there are a lot of these ones people completely miss there, but they focus on the technology and the product part of it. So I have been lately working with a lot of entrepreneurs. I take a lot of calls and I do mentoring one on one, and that's one of the reason I started writing some of the articles. Also, is to get them think holistically. It is
mhm,
a not a product, it's not a feature, it is a company, it is a business. It has to be eventually profitable, and you need to be able to manage, able to hire people, and maintain those motivation. So that is where I work with a lot of these people, thinking about, so if you look at my articles, January I wrote about hiring the right people. This month I'm writing about the financial hacks of various things, how to manage the financial side. The next month is going to be talk about product. So this is the same thing. I try to train them, and whenever they come and say, oh yeah, I can do this, they can do it in 3 weeks. The product takes 3 months
mm,
because of the bells and whistles around it and what it is. So I try to ask. So my way of mentoring also on that is asking questions. So if you're going to go to market with that, what are the certification, what are the qualification you need, what kind of characterization you need to do. Have you thought about that? Most of the people have not. They are thinking about, I have this cool feature, cool product, and cool market. That's a good thing, but have you thought about all the gaps in between?
mm. Have you met any like amazing standout entrepreneur or like really smart individual who just lived especially back home in an environment where they don't have access to resources, right? And the question behind this is, right, like sometimes you can be the smartest brightest person, but if you don't have the resources equipped to it, you can't do anything. And other times there are people who have who are not as talented but have access to limited resources, but because the resources they have is more than everyone else in their environment, they're able to shine so much brighter, right? And they stand out. So oftentimes the question is, in like an area like Sri Lanka, are the people being able to get into entrepreneurship, are they just coming from environments where they are just able to do leaps or able to take risks or able to build companies versus are they coming from under resourced areas that are able to scrap together the resources to launch them? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, so I think the one area which I tend to see from them, who, as you define, they are capable people, they can do those things. They live most of the time in Sri Lanka within
Mm,
that community. So it's a 20 million population. It has limited capital, limited expenses, and people save a lot of money, and they don't go and spend on this extra money, or they don't take extra risk. So then, if you look at these people, have a great idea, great knowledge, and the market size is so small. So that is where the most biggest challenge I have seen, not their idea being small or their capability being small. So what I have been telling them is, find the market beyond Sri Lanka.
mm,
Just go and find out. Like for some of them, a few of them, like SenseMade and SenseIGrow, and few others, I've been trying to teach them to come to US market. The same way, whenever I have people, I talked to a few other people other day, and I told them about, have you tried Africa? Have you tried different segment of the population, where you need to have a bigger, larger market size,
mm,
because you're not going to get all the people, everything from one place. So I haven't found these ideas are bad, or these people can't do that, but their marketing, and the other part of it is staying within the Tamil community.
mm,
So I tried them to tell also is, go outside, try to build relationship. I've seen few companies who doing extremely well. They are able to reach out through various channels. Through, there are internet, there are places where you can get jobs, or you can get experiences, as well as some subcontract job to get your name out. You can do that, but go beyond our community, go beyond
mm.
Sri Lanka. So that is my biggest battle cry for these people, to get out and find the market, which then build on top of that. Because if you look at it, even if you get $100,000 revenue, that is in Sri Lankan rupees, like a 2 crore. That's like a lot of money there. And how do you move that team, and how do you balance that? So those are important part of it, to make sure whatever ideas you come up with, you have a large enough market to go after.
Yeah, I think those are like biggest advice that's meant for like anyone who wants to get into entrepreneurship. But I like how that's what you would remind people, especially coming from back home. I want to tie this into also your experience as an investor and how how your experiences from the accidental entrepreneurship to working in back home communities. How did that tie into your investment thesis, and how did that work with Sandhill
Yeah,
Angels?
I mean, again, the angel investment or the startup investment is not for faint of heart, because it
Mm,
is very high risk, and one in 10 companies succeed. Even then, one in maybe 100 companies become unicorn or something like that. So
mm,
you have to look at it. So my main goal of angel investment, or going through that process, is being in the middle of it. I had done these two companies, and I went through all that process, and I'm not, I don't want to do one more at this point. Okay, I decided. So being angel investor, when able to give some money, and when you put some skin in the game, you
mm,
will start noticing where they are going, what they are doing, how market is doing, and all that. So
yeah.
I try to go follow that. So from a thesis point of view, it is simple as it is normal process. So first thing I look for is the team. Do they have a best team or people in that team? So they are the technologies person, marketing person, as well as the hiring the right people and all that. So that is the first part. The second one is, again, the market I go after is like a unique, and it has a very high return. because some of the thing is, you may have heard about 3D printing the rocket ship to Mars,
Hmm.
or a gas station for the satellites in the space, and 3D printing homes by removing the labor shortages and all that.
Hmm.
So and then in healthcare there are areas which I invested. I have pancreas, recreating the pancreas, or managing pain management through brain waves. So there are various aspects of it. These are all very deep technology based investment. So that's where I go. So for my
Mm.
investment, the underlying is good people, very underlying deep technology, and then let support these founders to get there by giving our advice and follow through.
Okay, I like that because deep tech is itself become its own category now. These are generally companies. I think previously they used to be seen as moonshots, but now seen as like taking a higher risk towards creating like a deeper technology that can solve some really minute or very niche, either very niche or very large problem set. Can you give us an example of a few deep technologies that stand out? I know you listed a few there, but is there a few companies that stand out or a few problems you've seen solved?
um, so there there are few of them actually. I can
Mm,
so one of them which I talk about 3D printing is that company called Relativity Space.
okay.
So they say they are trying to do the interesting thing which really attracted me on that is they are doing this 3D printing technology to go to Mars and all that. If you go back about 30, 40 years, all this communication, cell phone and all this technology was invented by defense, satellite defense, and the communication between military and all that by the government investment. So those investment made a lot of technology innovation that brought wireless communication, and there are so many other technologies came from that, a lot of materials and all that. The same fashion, this particular company Relativity Space is doing this 3D printing, very high impact product, the satellite to go to Mars. That's what their
Mm,
goal. And they can take a couple of these 3D printing machine to the Mars. And if there's a part, they run out of part or they want to reprint something, they can do it there. But what their underlying technology can be applied to any of the manufacturing in our world, which Earth. So if you want to do some kind of high end manufacturing, currently we go to China or different countries and all that. By developing this automation and 3D printing technology, so this foundational technology can not just for the space, it can be used in the normal places. So that is one interesting part. And the other side of it, one area, a company called Mythical Games, which invested with NFT and different thing. So where the games becoming, people are trying to take the gaming, and currently it is produced by Sony or Nintendo or Microsoft. So these guys are trying to they build a platform and they open up the characters and the gaming controls and all that to normal people. So by putting them together, so you will be able to bring uh, democratization of these tools. So anyone from India, Sri Lanka, or China who can come up with a new character and put few things together, it become a game. So this is one of
mm,
the interesting area. In the future, it will become democratization, and this will go into ed tech. I mean, I am invested in Knowledge Hook, one of the company from Sri Lanka and founder
yeah.
Travis. And what I liked about is he built a platform. So I, again, now come to think of it, I love platform plays more than
Yeah.
one odd thing. So when they build this educational platform for math, and it can be applied to different languages, different region, and how it can be scaled up and down. And then you in the platform you add the gamification and NFT and all those things. the market is, it doesn't, it's so much.
Yeah. Speaking of those new end technologies, Web 3.0, blockchain, crypto,
Yeah.
all these new components, the metaverse, right? Like it seems like the internet has spun into a new mode of evolution, right? Like
Mhm.
Web 3.0 building on top of what that looks like. From your perspective, both as a builder and also an investor, what does that mean for startups and tech companies in general? How
Yeah,
is things evolving?
it is going through a big, innovation cycle on,
Mm,
in the Web 3.0. I'm very bullish on that. In
yeah.
that sense, when we started the Web 1.0, where it's a one to many communication and all that, and
Hmm.
then Web 2.0, where the data centers and all that operated, where you can do multiple to multi, people coming in, because the earlier one was a single transaction coming in, going and pulling a Yahoo News or a different thing. The second one is all these price lines and pricing, people compete against each other. So thousands of people coming in and
Mm,
trying to find this one. The next one is going to be thousands of people coexist in an environment where they can choose their region. You don't have to physically travel, but you can be there. The metaverse is one of them, as well as there are so many different innovation is happening, where it's become a decentralized, and as you said about NFTs and blockchain and all that. So these are a lot of new technologies, but the underlying idea is what it is, just like the earth has this many countries, this many part of it, it is going to be in this virtual world. There are going to be regions, there are going to be people with common interests. They are going to build their communities, and they don't have to physically go there. They can enjoy the people. And again, it can be used badly also to polarize the population. But on the other hand, I am always hoping it will be in a positive spin, where, like, my wife is an introvert. She likes to do things in her way and with her different community, versus I like to be, extrovert. I try to go and talk to people. So you can be sitting in the same house and make this one for a couple of hours and live in that world, and where you meet people. You have, I mean, people talk about going for a beer, going for a coffee. I mean, it's not the coffee or beer makes sense, it's a company,
mm,
when you look at it the same way. But if you can make that one with, less impact to the environment, it's great. And that is another part is going to come, and the climate change and all those aspect of it, having this, decentralized part, and we can control, but we control the overall framework. We will be able to manage this better.
mm. I think that was the most well set out, not even an explanation, like a good roadmap for what this looks like. And I think that leads to what that looks like as this environment shifts, right? How can people better prepare? Because it seems like you're well read about this and prepared because you're living in the moment. How can people better prepare to figure out what does Web 3.0 technologies look like? What does state of innovation look like? What are the best problems to solve? Like where do you go to learn?
Okay, I mean,
Yeah.
that's a interesting point. I mean, the one good thing about is, with all this Web 2.0 has opened up so much. You say YouTube, Udemy, Khan Academy, all these various aspect of it. The way I start I have a process. So what I hear when I hear some of these words like metaverse, I didn't know
Mm,
much about it 6 months ago, and so then I took the note, and I went first to a simple internet search and find, where things are going, and what did it mean from a definition point of view. And then you connect that back to the foundation, because people try to look at these keywords, and then you started talking about it and go, and then get stuck. They didn't know where this will go. So I go reverse. Actually, I understand this technology and then go back and say, what kind of infrastructure is needed, what kind of software we needed, what kind of people we need to build this one. So you understand that, from their point of view, at the foundational point of view. And then when more and more publication, more like metaverse. Meta announced themselves to be a metaverse
Mm,
person, or I think omniverse from Nvidia. Microsoft is trying to do some of these. So I did, like, it took for me, after understanding the foundational thing, about a day or two for me to go and find out who are those big players and
mm,
who are the startup players, and then you see, okay, where they are going to fit in each one of them. Some of this is for the cryptocurrency or the money transaction. Some of them are going to be for privacy. Some of them are going to be for cyber security. Some of them are going to be for gamification or fun.
mm,
Some of them are going to go, or actually the other side of it is enterprise market, where the business people can come and do um, do conferences, kind of in person but not in person. So you break into this. So as I said, foundation, then understand, then you look at the current way of us doing in the work, and how do we map that one to the new paradigm. And once you
mm.
do that, it makes it easy, it makes it not too complicated.
I really like how you said that, because that points to like one topic that I want to jump to. While we have you here, is the state of education. You talked about how we can learn differently and better and keep in tuned, and you talked about Khan Academy and all these different things, resources coming available for people to learn. I want to see from your perspective, because you're someone whose education was disrupted. I think during your high school time, the Civil War got to a point where you could not complete it, and
Yeah.
yet you were able to transition into one of the most, education-related fields, heavy technology fields, right? Was that right? Like you became an engineer?
Yeah, I'm an engineer,
You're
yes.
an engineer, right? So, can you talk a little bit about that, like tying in how your, education was disrupted, how you were able to get to where you were, and then how, in the modern times now, people can utilize other resources to catch up if they themselves are facing a
Yeah.
similar
So
issues.
again, I think I grew up in Sri Lanka in 80s.
Yeah.
As I went to high school first year, because the high school there is from sixth grade to 12th grade. I
Mm,
went first year. The second year, which is 1983, the high school got burned down. Our library got burned down, and the whole building got occupied by the military as a military camp in that region. So we were kind of chasing away. So next 2 years we didn't have a school to go, but our parents and ancestors thought about education to be so important. So we had these small tuition centers. It would have been like, if you look at the new way, the Zoom based
mm,
meetups or some of those. So we have in our local community, we have tuition. We will go, and we'll go in the morning, we'll go in the evening, and for a couple of hours, to make sure that we keep up with the syllabus and education part of it. So that was important, because you had to be having that desire, that in this education will, and it will help you escape these kind of situation. So we believed in that. So
mm,
once you believe in that one, and you study, and the second part of it is competition. Because if you look at the capitalism world and all that, why, how we are competing against each other while we are collaborating. All my education system, even though we were doing that, we had these quarterly exams, and we had to pass, and we were very competitive against each other in that community. So that way, each others push each other up, coming to the next
gotcha.
level. And so that those are the important part of it. And if you map that back to COVID, as well as the early later part of what is happening here, it is very important. And I tell my kids, when as they go through, you need to make sure you do some of the foundational thing. For example,
Mm,
math. Some people are smart, but smart doesn't, but in our education system, you had to still get good grades to get there. You
mhm,
can't just say, my son is great, get me to university. So but you had to prove yourself. So you had to still follow the thing. So what do? You have access to a lot of these teaching and all that, But on top of that, that is not enough. That is basically you are listening to somebody telling you. So
Mm,
one of the foundational thing which I learned is practice doing it enough, not like too much. Some people go overboard, and some people don't do anything. I think get like at least 10 or 20 questions in the same area, and you go through that detail. And that I know that works out well for my kids. They're doing quite well because of that foundational part of it which we got there. So yes, you have access to a lot more material, lot more knowledge, but you need to be intentional of what you are trying to do. Don't waste time. If you are so good, and you keep doing thousands of questions versus doing something else you are not good at. So by using all these platform, find the balance where you learned enough and you applied by repeating that one, and then move forward.
mm. Yeah, so the move forward part component, right? Like especially with the state of again the metaverse coming up, the capability for us to learn, work, and even join companies and form cultures online becomes more to be. And like what seems as work changes, the aspirations of the youth have changed. Like most young adults nowadays don't want to grow up to become astronauts, engineers, scientists. They want to become YouTube stars. They want to become creators. They want to become they want to go into the content or gaming industries. And in comparison, the Eastern countries seem to be churning out doctors, lawyers, engineers, and these things. And the comparative balance, I have an opinion on this. Like, I actually think it's great because whenever new ideas come up, it's actually the adoption that's important.
Mhm.
And in the Western side, as we focus on creators, we're actually getting a generation that's good at communicating ideas across new mediums. But I think I'd love to hear your opinion. What do you think about this like cultural shift we're seeing now, especially in the Western nations, about people want to become more content creators and focused around there?
I have a little bit of contrarian view on that. The Western nations were created and has been on that small, small medium sized businesses having, like, for example, US. If you look at the federal system, then you go to state has the localities, and those kind of small part of it. And then all the business were privately owned except for the some of the government part. And that was. And and there has been a shift in top down influences of the governmental change. And in US, both parties give out money to different people and do that, rather than people working from bottom up getting to you know do those things.
Mm,
So my contrarian view there is still always being in the Western countries. It has been that people were creative.
mm,
It was for entertainment because they had the safety net of no war, no poverty. So they were doing this Hollywood and various art and various creativity. All that part was there. And and giving people who even migrate from outside to this area, they get that safety net, and they are able to go and creative and innovate and go to different things. So what I'm trying to say there is, if you look at those people who are being innovators, and it is not new. But you
mm,
are right, the scale may be a lot higher lately, because a lot of people are feeling this 9 to 5 job is not for me. It is, corporate people are bad, those kind of mentality. So if you go back, I heard in the 60s and 1970s, the baby boomers at that time, they were hippies and they were fighting the system.
yeah.
And this is another iteration of that, in my opinion. These people are fighting the system, and therefore the good reason: the climate change, the environmental thing, and as well as mental health. Those are the areas are critical for these people. Okay, but I tell people is that these same people who are fighting for this, 10 or 20 years down the road, uh, you know, just like the baby boomers screwed up the financial system, these guys are going to be doing this something, so bad, because they become selfish at that point.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
it is I mean, I don't wouldn't say it's a full change. It is like, go back and forth to this system.
I love it. Ray Dalio talks about this too, the cycles that humans go through, right? And there's this idea of the 100-year cycle that we generationally go through, and I think you're right. As we go through these boom and bust cycles, we see these periods of high growth and rewards from there, and there's periods of downturn, and I think we're in between right now. So, Ruben, I love engaging with your content. I can't wait for your podcast to be coming out. But till then, where can people find you? Where's the best place to learn more about your writings?
Yeah, so again, I have normally I'm in Medium and Substack. So there is, if you go and look for the Accidental Entrepreneur by Ruben, you will be able to find that. Then you can connect me in LinkedIn. So LinkedIn also, I have my own page, as well as I have a page for connecting with uh, my articles, as well as I have a YouTube channel going. So
Yeah.
these are all named the Accidental Entrepreneur by Ruben. So that way you have the continuity and the branding part of it. All these are done intentionally.
Yeah.
And then I have written about 80 some articles, and I have done 31 videos, YouTube videos. And so please, you can go there. Whenever you read that, at the end it will say subscribe. If you subscribe to it, every Wednesday morning you'll get a new article and a video from me, and giving you that background. So I'm just trying to make sure these the messages are very positive oriented. I want to also tell people, it's easy to go and say what can't be done, why not, why shouldn't you do that, and all that, versus I give you example of how to navigate the nuances of these the business side of it. And I was coming from a poor country in Sri Lanka, and through the war and able to make it. If I can do it, you can do it. That's my message. And so I don't want to be negative, I don't want to be discouraging, but I will be honest and practical.
I love that. Thank you, Ruben, so much for coming on the show.
Thank you.